When most people think of World War II defences, they picture trenches, air raid sirens and soldiers in helmets. But the war wasn't only fought on the front lines. Across Europe, millions of civilians had to turn their homes into fortresses. Improvised strongholds, built not from concrete and guns, but from practical ingenuity. These were ordinary people, with no military resources, who had to protect their families from shrapnel, shockwaves and firebombs. Out of necessity came one of the most overlooked systems of protection in modern history, the Blackout and Home Defence Network. Blackout shutters, steel mesh barriers and oil-treated cloth weren't just wartime measures. They were early examples of passive defence systems so effective that their principles still apply today. For anyone who appreciates history not just as memory, but as applied knowledge, this topic is gold. Because those same materials that shielded civilians from bombs also form the foundation of modern security and energy-saving systems. Let's break down how wartime resourcefulness turned houses into bunkers, and how you can still apply those lessons for safety, privacy, and even sustainability today. During the Blitz, one of the first defence orders issued to civilians was to black out all light. Every visible glow risked drawing the attention of enemy bombers. The British Home Office distributed manuals on how to completely seal windows using layered barriers that could block even a single candle's flame. That's how blackout shutters became standard household defence. But these weren't decorative shutters. They were functional, layered systems. Households built them from dense wood panels, backed with tar paper or steel mesh. The goal wasn't just light control, it was blast management. Properly fitted shutters helped deflect pressure waves from nearby explosions, preventing shattered glass from spraying across rooms. In some industrial towns, people used old sheet metal, sandwiched between wooden frames, to reinforce windows. Here's what's fascinating. This same concept is now mirrored in modern home security design. Blackout shutters evolved into storm shutters, ballistic window covers, and privacy barriers. The principle remains identical: dense, multi-layered barriers that absorb shock, resist penetration, and isolate interior light. For a practical modern use, consider how a simple set of thick wooden or steel shutters can still enhance your home's defence. If you live in a storm-prone or high-risk area, constructing shutters from plywood with a thin steel backing creates protection not just from intruders, but from flying debris. The World War II standard ratio was about a 1-inch thick panel, reinforced every 12 inches with crossbeams or bracing bars. Properly secured with interior hinges, they can still turn a window into a defensive barrier. While blackout shutters sealed homes against light and blast, they also risked trapping heat and smoke. To solve this, engineers and homeowners began using fine steel mesh in key openings. This mesh, sometimes taken from chicken wire or salvage fencing, served multiple roles. It allowed airflow while preventing debris from flying into the room during air raids. When installed behind windows or across vents, it also served as a rudimentary form of anti-intrusion protection. Light, strong, and surprisingly durable. In urban areas like London and Rotterdam, steel mesh became standard issue for upper-storey windows and attic vents. When explosions caused negative pressure, mesh prevented glass and wood fragments from being sucked inward. It also reduced the chance of looters or opportunists forcing entry after bombings, a problem that became serious in cities left partially abandoned. This dual-purpose system remains useful today. Modern architects still rely on the same combination: Mesh for airflow, protection and security. You can apply this concept at home easily. Replace flimsy window screens with galvanized steel mesh rated for security or industrial use. The typical gauge for wartime mesh was around 16 to 18 gauge steel, woven tightly enough to stop fragments, but open enough to allow ventilation. For a low-cost modern version, you can use 1.2 mm expanded steel sheeting, strong enough to resist forced entry, yet flexible enough to install in frames. One of the least remembered, but, most crucial home defences of the Second World War was the oil-treated blackout cloth. It served a dual role, blocking light and reducing the flammability of windows and doors. In Britain, Germany and Finland alike, civilians treated heavy fabric, often old sailcloth or burlap, with linseed oil. Once dried, this cloth became dense, water-resistant, and, difficult to ignite. This technique was grounded in chemistry, not superstition. Linseed oil polymerizes as it dries, forming a natural resin coating that seals fibers. When layered across windows, it not only prevented light leakage, but also created a vapor-tight barrier that could, slow down the spread of smoke and chemical gases. Many households hung double layers, one on the inside to block light and another on the outer frame to deflect sparks or embers. Quite clever, isn't it? Today, the same principle has found new life in sustainable design. Oil-treated or wax-treated cloth is still used in tents, sails and tarps to make weatherproof, flame-resistant barriers without synthetics. It's fascinating how some things just stand the test of time, isn't it? For modern survivalists, this is practical knowledge. You can make your own fire-resistant canvas by soaking thick cotton or canvas in a 1:4 ratio of boiled linseed oil to mineral spirits. Let it dry outdoors for several days until it's tack-free. Once dry, it becomes a flexible, semi-waterproof layer suitable for window covers, tool wraps, or even emergency shelters. Quite handy, I'd say. During the war, this simple fabric saved lives by keeping light and heat inside homes while shielding them from incendiary sparks. It turned every curtain into a fire-resistant shield, a detail often missed in history books but deeply admired by wartime engineers. The combination of shutters, mesh and oil-treated fabric wasn't just about surviving air raids. It represented an early form of systems engineering, understanding how to combine materials to manage airflow, temperature, light and pressure. Every layer served a purpose. Shutters absorbed impact, mesh preserved ventilation, and cloth prevented ignition. Together, they created a silent, efficient defense network that required no electricity, no complex mechanics, and very little cost. The concept holds up even today. In modern preparedness and security design, experts still recommend layering defense rather than relying on a single barrier. The wartime home was a perfect model of this principle: light control, shock resistance and air safety achieved entirely through passive means. If you're ever setting up a safe room, off-grid shelter, or simply want to harden your home without heavy expense, these World War II principles still apply. Combine dense shutters, steel mesh and treated fabric to build resilience that doesn't depend on technology, just knowledge and materials that last. What civilians achieved during the Second World War wasn't luck. It was intelligence under pressure. They didn't wait for the government to hand out solutions. They used what they had, understood how materials behaved, and applied science through necessity. That mindset, turning ordinary materials into layered protection, is what real resilience looks like. So, the next time you walk past an old shuttered building or see a storm cover on a modern house, remember, those designs aren't new. They're descendants of a time when every window and every wall had to defend a family from the sky. And those methods, nearly a century later, still stop intruders, whether human or environmental, just as effectively. If you value this kind of history, where real-world ingenuity meets survival and design, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning and share this episode. Every story like this reminds us that true defense starts with understanding the materials around us and using them wisely.